You feel it before you see it. That is what every survivor will tell you, assuming they live long enough to tell anyone anything at all. The ground beneath your boots begins to shudder with a rhythm that your brain refuses to accept as footsteps, because nothing that walks should be able to make the earth itself recoil in terror. You are huddled in what remains of a manufactorum, the walls pockmarked with the acidic burns that mark every structure the Tyranids have touched, and you are trying very hard not to think about the fact that your lasgun feels like a child's toy in your hands. Your name is Trooper Valen Kursk of the Cadian Toon 17th, though the regiment number does not matter much anymore. Most of the Toon 17th is dead, their bodies broken and dissolved into the biomass that feeds the swarm. You are part of 2nd Squad, 4th Platoon, which sounds official and organized until you realize that 2nd Squad now consists of 7 men instead of the regulation 10, and 4th Platoon can barely muster 30 souls across all its squads combined. Sergeant Harrow is still alive, which is something. He crouches beside you near the shattered window, his weathered face drawn tight with an expression you have learned to recognize as controlled terror masked by decades of military discipline. The tremors grow stronger. Dust sifts down from the ceiling above you, and somewhere in the building's depths, metal groans as structural supports begin to buckle under vibrations they were never designed to withstand. Trooper Mensk is praying quietly to the Emperor, his lips moving in the familiar litany of protection that seems increasingly futile with each passing second. Corporal Thane checks his lasgun for the 4th time in as many minutes, a nervous habit that would normally earn him a rebuke from Harrow, but the sergeant says nothing. You all understand that checking your equipment is something to do, a familiar action that keeps your hands busy and your mind from contemplating what approaches. Private Kellen is the youngest of your squad, barely 18 standard years old, and you can see his hands shaking as he grips his weapon. He arrived as a replacement 3 weeks ago, fresh from the training world with the Imperial infantryman's uplifting primer still crisp in his pack. The primer assured him that the Emperor protects, that courage and faith are weapons as potent as any lasgun, that a loyal soldier of the Imperium need never fear the Xenos. The primer did not prepare him for this. The primer never does. The tremors intensify until they are no longer tremors but impacts, each one powerful enough to rattle your teeth and send cracks spiderwebbing across the already damaged walls. You risk a glance through the window, peering out into the ash-choked air that perpetually shrouds this world since the Tyranids began their consumption. The sky is the color of old bruises, purple and black and sick yellow, and the organic structures that the invaders have seeded across the landscape pulse with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then you see it, and your mind struggles to process what your eyes are showing you. The Bio-Titan emerges from the toxic fog like a vision from humanity's deepest nightmares, given terrible, physical form. It towers 30 meters tall, roughly equivalent to a Warlord-class Titan, but where an Imperial war engine is all hard edges and manufactured angles. This creature is a symphony of organic curves and chitinous plates, a living engine of consumption and death that moves with a horrible, purposeful grace. Its body is supported by 6 massive legs, each one thick as a chimera transport and ending in talons that could skewer a tank with casual ease. The legs work in coordinated rhythm, carrying the immense bulk forward with surprising speed, each step creating craters in the rock-crete street and sending vibrations through the earth that you can feel in your chest. The creature's carapace is the color of old bone, stained with ichor, segmented plates of chitin, thicker than the armor on a Lehman Russ battle tank, overlapping in patterns that somehow manage to be both beautiful and utterly revolting. These plates are not smooth, but textured with ridges and protrusions, covered in smaller chitinous spines and sensory organs that twitch and swivel as the beast catalogues its environment. Between the plates, you can see the creature's actual flesh, a glistening purple-grey tissue that pulses with arterial movement, covered in a thin sheen of moisture that might be sweat or might be some form of secreted slime. The torso section rises from the leg assembly like an obscene tower, bulging with what you realize are muscle masses powerful enough to operate the weapon symbiotes mounted on its upper body. 2 biocannons, one on each side where a human's arms might be, extend forward like the barrels of artillery pieces, except they are alive, organic tubes of meat and cartilage that flex and contract as if breathing. The cannon openings are ringed with teeth-like structures, and you can see movement within them, a churning of what looks like maggots, but which you know from the briefings are actually clusters of acidic organisms waiting to be launched. The head section, if it can be called that, is a nightmare of sensory apparatus and structural reinforcement. Multiple eyes, some the size of your torso, are set at different angles around what passes for a skull, their surfaces reflecting the diseased light with an oily sheen. A maw dominates the front of the head, lined with blade-like mandibles that work continuously, tasting the air and testing for chemical signatures. The entire skull structure is crowned with sweeping horns, or perhaps antennae, complex organic receivers that likely connect the biotitan to the greater hive mind's synaptic network. But it is the belly that makes your stomach turn. The creature's underside is protected by a writhing mass of tentacles, each one easily 10 meters long, that lash and coil in constant motion. These are the lash whips you have heard about, symbiotic organisms in their own right that serve as both sensors and close-quarters weapons, capable of impaling or strangling anything foolish enough to approach the biotitan's vulnerable core. Between the thrashing tendrils, you can see more of that glistening tissue, crisscrossed with veins thick as cables that pulse with the creature's alien heartbeat. The smell reaches you even through the manufactorum's walls and your respirator's filters. It is the stench of a charnel house combined with industrial chemicals, of rotting meat and alien biology, of something fundamentally wrong existing in a universe that should have rejected it. The odor makes your eyes water and your stomach clench, a physical assault that accompanies the visual horror. Sergeant Harrow is speaking into the Voxcaster, his voice tight but professional as he reports the contact to whatever command structure still exists. Command, 2nd Squad reporting. We have visual on Bio-Titan-class organism, approximately 300 meters from our position and closing, requesting immediate support. Over. There is a crackle of static. Then a voice rendered hollow by poor signal quality responds. 2nd Squad, we acknowledge your report. No support assets available at this time. You are ordered to engage if possible and delay the target's advance. Command out. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Engage if possible, as if your squad of 7 guardsmen with laser guns and a single heavy bolter have any chance against something that could step on an entire platoon without noticing. Harrow's jaw works as he grinds his teeth, a sign of barely suppressed rage that you have learned to recognize. He turns to face the squad, and his eyes sweep across each of you in turn. When he speaks, his voice is steady, carrying the weight of a man who has accepted what is coming and chosen to face it with whatever dignity remains. Right then. You heard the orders. We are going to make that Xenos bastard notice us, even if it is the last thing we do. Thane, get the heavy bolter set up on the 2nd floor with good overlapping fields of fire. Mensk, you are on spotting duty for him. Kellen, you stay with me. The rest of you, spread out along this floor and find positions with clear sight lines, but enough cover to give you a fighting chance. We are not going to kill that thing, but maybe, just maybe, we can hurt it enough to slow it down for the regiments falling back behind us. Nobody mentions that there might not be any regiments falling back behind you. Nobody mentions that this entire subsector has been overrun, and that rescue is a fantasy whispered by men too scared to face reality. You move to your assigned position because you are a soldier of the Imperial Guard, and soldiers follow orders even when those orders amount to choosing the manner of your death. The Bio-Titan continues its approach, and now you can hear it as well as feel it. The creature makes sounds that should not be possible. a combination of organic processes operating at a scale that turns normal biology into something monstrous. There is a wet, rhythmic squelching as its massive legs articulate, the sound of internal fluids being pumped through circulatory systems large enough to service a starship. There is a hissing, almost respiratory noise that comes from vents along its carapace as the Biotitan expels excess heat and toxins from its alien metabolism. And underlying it all is a low-frequency vibration that you feel more than hear, a subsonic rumble that makes your bones ache and your vision blur at the edges. Lesser creatures accompany the Biotitan like pilotfish following a shark. You can see termagants scuttling in its shadow, dozens of them moving with that distinctive alien gait that is neither quite insectoid nor quite reptilian. Hormigants bound alongside the Titan's legs, their wickedly curved claws dripping with toxins. These smaller organisms are threats in their own right, each one capable of tearing a human apart in seconds, but in the presence of their colossal relative, they seem almost insignificant. They are there to protect the Biotitan from infantry-scale harassment and to exploit whatever carnage it creates. But their presence also serves another purpose. They are a reminder that you face not individual creatures, but a unified organism, a fragment of the hive mind's will made manifest across thousands of bodies. Corporal Thane has the heavy bolter locked into position, its bipod braced against a relatively intact section of the upper floor. The weapon is a hulking piece of machinery, capable of firing mass-reactive rounds that explode on impact, deadly against most infantry and light vehicles. Against a Biotitan, it might as well be throwing stones at a fortress wall, but it is all you have that could even potentially damage that chitinous armor. Thane's face is set in grim determination as he performs the final checks on the weapon, cycling the action to chamber the first round. You settle into your own position behind what was once an industrial separator, its metal housing pitted and scored, but still thick enough to potentially stop a flesh-borer beetle if you are extraordinarily lucky. Your lasgun feels pathetically inadequate in your hands. You know its specifications by heart, having maintained the weapon for 3 years across half a dozen war zones. It fires pulses of focused light energy, each shot capable of burning through flesh and, with enough sustained fire, even penetrating the ceramite armor of a space marine if you hit a weak point. Against an unarmored human, a lasgun is devastatingly effective, capable of severing limbs or punching fist-sized holes through torsos. But a Biotitan is not an unarmored human. Its chitinous plates are centimeters thick, layered in overlapping sections that can potentially turn aside even lascannon fire through sheer mass. The creature's internal structure is redundant beyond human comprehension, with multiple vital systems distributed throughout its enormous body. Killing it would require either sustained fire from Titan-grade weapons, concentrated assault from heavy armor, or a truly staggering amount of conventional firepower delivered with impossible precision. You have none of these things. What you have is 7 men, 42 lasgun power packs counting your spares, approximately 200 heavy bolter rounds, a handful of frag grenades that would barely scratch that armor, and the dubious protection of a half-collapsed building. It is not enough. It will never be enough. But you will fight anyway, because that is what it means to be a guardsman. You hold the line even when the line is indefensible. You stand even when standing means dying. You fight because fighting is all you have left. The Biotitan is 200 meters away now, close enough that you can make out individual details of its construction that you immediately wish you could unsee. The biocannons are moving, tracking independently as the creature's distributed intelligence processes targets and threats. You can see things moving in those cannon barrels, clusters of larvae-like organisms that writhe with horrible vitality. The massive eyes are focusing, their alien pupils contracting as they fix on the manufactorum that houses your squad. The creature knows you are here. It has catalogued your position, assessed your threat level, and decided you are worthy of attention. Sergeant Harrow's voice cuts through the moment with the tone of a man who has made peace with the inevitable. For the Emperor and for Cadia, make every shot count. You disengage the safety on your laser gun and brace the stock against your shoulder, sighting down the barrel at the approaching nightmare. Your hands are steady, despite the fear that threatens to overwhelm you, muscle memory and training asserting themselves even as your conscious mind screams at the futility of what you are about to do. Around you, you can hear the other members of your squad doing the same, the soft clicks and mechanical sounds of weapons being readied for war. The Bio-Titan takes another step, and the ground buckles beneath its weight. A section of street collapses entirely, revealing the sewer system beneath, but the creature simply adjusts its gait and continues forward without pause. Its biocannons begin to glow, a sickly bioluminescence emanating from deep within the organic barrels, as whatever horrific chemical processes power them reach critical ignition. The air around the creature seems to thicken, as if reality itself is struggling to accommodate something so fundamentally wrong. This is the moment before, the last few seconds when you can still pretend that there might be a way out of this, that reinforcements might arrive, that some miracle might save you from what is about to happen. You know better. Every Guardsman knows better. You have seen what the Tyranids do to the worlds they consume, watched from orbit as entire continents were dissolved into organic sludge to feed the hive fleet's insatiable hunger. You have fought through kilometer after kilometer of terrain, transformed into alien biomass, stepping over the liquefied remains of cities and people, breathing air thick with spores that your filters could not entirely scrub clean. The Bio-Titan looms against the poisoned sky, a monument to the cold, efficient horror of the hive mind's design. It exists for one purpose: to break anything too large or too heavily defended for lesser Tyranid organisms to overwhelm. It is evolution weaponized, biology pushed beyond the limits of what should be possible, and forged into an engine of consumption. And you, Trooper Valen Kursk of the Cadian 217th, are about to discover exactly what it means to stand in its path. The moment shatters as the Bio-Titan opens fire. The biocannons erupt with a sound like tearing flesh magnified 1,000 times, a wet roar that drowns out everything else. From each cannon barrel, a stream of organisms launches forward, arcing through the air in a parabolic trajectory that speaks to the creature's sophisticated targeting calculations. These are not simple projectiles, but living ammunition, each one a maggot-like creature the size of your fist that has been specifically evolved to be fired from the biocannon's organic barrel. They leave trails of acrid smoke in their wake, their bodies sizzling as they react with the atmosphere. The first impacts strike the manufactorum's upper floors with devastating effect. The maggot rounds hit the walls and immediately begin their horrific work. Each organism carries within it concentrated bioacids and toxins so virulent that they eat through ferrocrete and metal with terrifying speed. The walls begin to dissolve, literally melting as the acid spreads outward from each impact point in a growing circle of liquefaction. The structural supports that held up the third floor fail almost immediately, and you watch in horror as an entire section of the building slumps inward with a groaning crash. Corporal Thane does not even have time to scream. One moment, he is at his firing position with the heavy bolter, and the next, the floor beneath him gives way as the acid eats through the support beams. He falls amid a cascade of rubble and molten metal, his body disappearing into the collapse. Trooper Mensk, who was spotting for him, tries to jump clear, but the floor is disintegrating too quickly. You see him lunge for the stairs, see his hand actually grasp the railing, and then the railing itself dissolves into slurry, and Mensk plummets down amid the ruin. The heavy bolter, your single anti-armor weapon, is gone. Just like that, in the space of 3 seconds, your squad's already minimal offensive capability has been cut in half. The Bio-Titan does not pause to assess the damage. It continues walking forward, its biocannons already cycling for another barrage. Those massive legs carry it closer with each step, and now you can see the smaller organisms swarming around its feet more clearly. Termagants in their dozens, their fleshborer weapons already chattering as they fire at the building's lower floors. Each fleshborer beetle hits with enough force to punch through standard flak armor, and you can hear the wet impacts as the rounds strike the walls around you. Sergeant Harrow is still alive, still giving orders, even as the building disintegrates around you. "Return fire! Hit that bastard with everything you have got!" It is a futile command, and you all know it, but you obey anyway because following orders is the only thing keeping you from total panic. You sight on one of the Bio-Titan's massive eyes and pull the trigger. The laser gun kicks against your shoulder with its familiar recoil, a beam of red light lancing across the distance to strike the creature's face. The shot is good, well aimed, and it hits exactly where you intended. The last bolt impacts the outer lens of one of those enormous eyes, and for a brief, irrational moment, you allow yourself to hope that you have done some damage. Then you see the targeting beam simply disperse across the eye's surface, absorbed by some form of transparent armor, or perhaps simply dissipated by the thickness of the biological lens. The Bio-Titan does not even flinch. Around you, the other survivors are firing as well. Last bolts streak through the ash-choked air in a futile light show, dozens of shots hitting the creature's carapace and achieving absolutely nothing. The chitin armor is simply too thick, too resilient, and the laser gun's penetrating power too weak. You might as well be shooting at the hull of a starship for all the damage you are inflicting. A few shots hit the exposed tissue between armor plates, and you see the flesh blacken and char. But the creature has so much flesh, so much redundant biology, that these pinprick wounds mean nothing. The Bio-Titan's response is methodical and terrifying in its efficiency. The creature shifts its weight, angling its body to bring both biocannons to bear on your building with maximum effect. You watch, helpless, as those organic barrels elevate and adjust, tracking with impossible precision despite their massive size. Then they fire again, and this time the barrage is concentrated directly on your floor. The world dissolves into chaos and acid. Maggot rounds slam into the walls, the floor, the ceiling, each impact releasing fresh waves of biotoxin that begin eating through everything they touch. The air itself becomes caustic, burning your exposed skin and making your eyes stream with tears even through your respirator. You throw yourself flat as a section of wall directly above you melts away, dropping liquefied ferrocrete that hisses and steams as it hits the floor beside your head. Private Kellen is not fast enough. You see him try to dodge, see him actually almost make it to cover, but a maggot round impacts the beam beside him. The acid splash hits his arm and immediately begins burning through his uniform, through his flesh, through bone. Kellen screams, a high-pitched sound of pure agony that cuts through even the roar of combat. He tries to tear the uniform off, but the acid is already spreading, eating its way up his shoulder and across his chest. Sergeant Harrow reaches him in 3 quick strides and does the only merciful thing possible. A single last shot to the head, and Kellen's screaming stops. The body continues to dissolve, the acid not caring whether its victim is alive or dead. The building is coming apart. You can feel it in the way the floor tilts beneath you, in the groaning protests of overstressed metal and crumbling rockreet. Another direct hit, and the entire structure will collapse, burying anyone still inside under tons of rubble and acid-soaked debris. Harrow must reach the same conclusion because he is already moving, already herding the survivors toward what remains of the stairwell. "Fall back! Get to ground level and spread out. We cannot do anything from up here." You scramble to your feet, your laser gun clutched to your chest as you run through air thick with toxic particles and the stench of dissolution. Behind you, another section of the building gives way with a thunderous crash. The Bio-Titan is still firing, still advancing, methodically destroying the structure floor by floor as it eliminates potential threats. You make it to the stairs and half run, half fall down them, your boots skidding on steps slick with condensation, and worse things. Ground level is marginally safer, but only marginally. The termagants have reached the building's perimeter, their clicking, chittering calls echoing through the ruined structure as they search for prey. You can see them through the gaps in the walls, small by Tyranid standards, but each one still a lethal killing machine. Their flesh borers track left and right, scanning for targets, and their eyeless faces seem to look directly at you, despite the lack of recognizable sensory organs. Sergeant Harrow organizes the survivors with impressive speed considering the circumstances. There are 5 of you left now. Yourself, Harrow, Trooper Vanson, who you barely know, having only joined the squad last week, Trooper Gallen, who serves as the squad's medic, though his skills seem largely irrelevant when the enemy dissolves bodies rather than just shooting them, and Trooper Yuri, the quiet man who never speaks, but whose laser gun is always the cleanest, the best maintained in the squad. 5 men against a Biotitan and its escort swarm. The mathematics of survival have become very simple and very grim. "We cannot hurt the big one," Harrow states with flat certainty. "Focus fire on the little bastards. Keep them off us, and maybe we survive long. Enough to see how this plays out. It is not much of a plan, but it is something. A concrete action that gives purpose to the next few seconds of your life. You move to a firing position beside a collapsed girder, using it as makeshift cover, and sight on the nearest termagant. The creature is perhaps 20 meters away, moving with that distinctive scuttling gait that seems to defy normal biomechanics. Its body is hunched forward, all 4 limbs working in coordination to propel it across the broken ground. The flesh borer weapon is integrated into its arms, a biological rifle that launches flesh-eating beetles with lethal accuracy. You lead the target slightly, accounting for its movement, and fire. The last bolt catches the termagant in its torso section, burning through the comparatively thin chitin and into the vital organs beneath. The creature convulses, its limbs spasming, and topples forward to lie twitching in the rubble. 1 down, only several hundred more to go. The other survivors are engaging as well, their laser guns adding their own red beams to the defensive fire. More termagants fall, their bodies adding to the carpet of Xenos dead that already litters the battlefield. But for every one you kill, 3 more seem to appear from the swarm, drawn by the noise and the promise of biomass. They are not mindless, these creatures. They use cover when it is available, they coordinate their attacks, and they learn from each engagement. You watch one group of termagants actually flank around a collapsed wall, moving to attack from an unexpected angle. Trooper Yuri spots them and adjusts fire, his shots methodical and precise as he drops the flankers one by one. But the termagants are not the real problem. The real problem is still approaching, still walking forward with the inevitability of a natural disaster given form. The Biotitan has closed to within 100 meters now, close enough that you can see the individual muscle fibers flexing beneath its chitin armor, close enough to make out the smaller organisms that cling to its carapace like parasites on a massive host. Its biocannons have ceased firing, the barrels angling upward, as if the creature has decided that your building is sufficiently neutralized to not warrant further ammunition expenditure. Instead, the Biotitan uses its physical presence as a weapon. It lowers its head, those massive mandibles spreading wide, and from somewhere deep in its alien throat comes a sound that should not exist. It is not quite a roar, because that would imply something mammalian, some commonality with terrestrial biology. Instead, it is a modulated shriek, a combination of ultrasonic and subsonic frequencies that resonates in your chest cavity and makes your inner ear rebel. The sound carries information, you realize, instructions and imperatives broadcast across the synaptic network that links all Tyranid organisms within range. In response to this terrible call, the swarm's behavior changes. The termagants stop their cautious advance and surge forward in a mass, throwing themselves at your position with suicidal aggression. They are no longer trying to preserve themselves, but simply trying to overwhelm through sheer numbers. Behind them, larger forms are moving. You catch glimpses of hormagaunts bounding forward, their scything talons extended for melee combat. Somewhere in the swarm, you hear the distinctive high-pitched shriek of gargoyles taking to the air, their leathery wings beating as they achieve altitude before diving toward your position. "Pour it on!" Harrow roars, and all 5 of you are firing as fast as you can work the triggers, your lasguns on full automatic despite the drain on power packs. The air fills with lasbolts, hundreds of them, and termagants die in droves. Their bodies pile up, ichor spraying, limbs severed by the sustained fire. But there are too many of them, and not enough of you. A termagant reaches Trooper Vanson's position and fires its flesh borer at point-blank range. The beetles hit Vanson in the face, punching through his helmet's visor and burrowing into his skull. He goes down without a sound, dead before his body hits the ground. A hormagaunt vaults over a pile of rubble and lands in the middle of your position, its talons already sweeping in lethal arcs. Trooper Gallen tries to bring his lasgun to bear, but the creature is too fast, too close. The talons catch him across the chest, cutting through his flak armor like it is paper, and opening him from shoulder to hip. His blood sprays across the floor in arterial gouts, and his body crumples. The hormagaunt is already turning, seeking its next victim, when Sergeant Harrow puts a lasbolt through its head at a range of less than 2 meters. The creature drops, but 2 more are already leaping through the gap it created. You are going to die here. The realization hits you with perfect clarity, cutting through the adrenaline and the fear to leave only cold acceptance. There is no way out of this. The swarm is going to overrun your position in the next 30 seconds. And even if by some miracle you survive the lesser creatures, the Bio-Titan itself is almost upon you. You can see it clearly now, can watch its legs articulate as it navigates through the ruins, can see the lash whips beneath its belly, beginning to extend outward in anticipation of prey. But if you are going to die, you will die fighting. That is the only choice left to you, the only way to impose meaning on these final moments. You switch your lasgun to single shot, to conserve ammunition, and begin firing with deliberate precision. Each shot is aimed, controlled, making every power pack count for something. A termagant advancing on Harrow's flank goes down with a burnt-out skull. A hormagaunt, leaping for Yuri, takes a shot to its leg joint and crashes to the ground where Yuri can finish it. You fire and reload, falling into the mechanical rhythm of combat. That training has burned into your muscle memory. The Bio-Titan is 30 meters away. At this range, it blots out the sky, a wall of alien flesh and chitin that fills your entire field of vision. The smell is overwhelming, penetrating even through your respirator's filters to fill your nose and mouth with the stench of the creature's metabolism. Those massive eyes are looking down at you, regarding you with whatever passes for curiosity in the hive mind's distributed intelligence. You are an insect to this thing, less than an insect, a momentary inconvenience to be crushed underfoot and forgotten. One of those enormous legs rises up, preparing to stamp down on your position. The limb is thick as a tree trunk, covered in smaller spines and sensory tendrils, and it moves with horrifying speed despite its size. The shadow of the leg falls across you, and time seems to slow as your brain processes the imminence of your death. You will be crushed into paste, your body reduced to component molecules that will feed the swarm's endless hunger. Your death will have no meaning, no greater purpose beyond adding a few kilograms to the biomass total. But then something unexpected happens. From somewhere beyond the ruined manufactorum, there comes a sound that makes your heart leap with irrational hope. It is the distinctive crack of Lascanon fire, followed immediately by the deeper boom of battle cannons discharging. Heavy weapons, Imperial heavy weapons, which means reinforcements have arrived. The Bio-Titan's leg pauses mid-descent, the creature's attention diverted by this new threat. Those massive eyes swivel in their sockets, tracking toward the source of the fire. A Lascanon bolt hits the Bio-Titan in its side, striking between 2 armor plates and punching deep into the flesh beneath. The creature recoils, Not from pain exactly, but from damage recognition. Its alien nervous system registering the wound and calculating the threat. For the first time since it appeared, the Biotitan seems to acknowledge that it might be in danger. More shots follow, a coordinated barrage that speaks of experienced gunners and good targeting data. You cannot see the source of the fire from your position, but you can hear the distinctive rumble of tank engines, can feel the ground shake from their approach. Lehman Russ battle tanks, you realize. At least a full squadron of them, possibly more, advancing in combat formation and laying down suppressing fire. The Biotitan is turning to face this new threat, its biocannons elevating to engage the armor. In that moment of distraction, you see your chance. Not a chance to survive necessarily, but a chance to do something, to contribute in some meaningful way to the death of this monstrosity. "The belly!" you shout to Harrow and Yuri, the only survivors still standing. "We can hit its belly while it is focused on the tanks." It is a desperate plan, probably suicidal, but it is better than waiting here to be crushed. The underside of a Biotitan is supposed to be its most vulnerable point, protected by those lash whips, but not armored nearly as heavily as the rest of its body. If you can get close enough, if you can somehow get past the lashing tendrils, you might be able to inflict actual damage. Harrow understands immediately. He is already moving, sprinting toward the Biotitan with his laser gun held ready. You follow, and Yuri is right behind you. The three of you running across open ground toward a creature that could kill you all with a single step. It is insanity, pure insanity. But it is also the only option that offers anything beyond a futile defensive stand. The Biotitan's lash, whips sense your approach and respond immediately. The tendrils snap toward you with viper-like speed, each one tipped with a bony spike or barbed hook capable of impaling a man. You dodge left as a tendril slashes through the space you occupied a second before, so close you can feel the wind of its passage. Another whip catches Harrow across the shoulder, the barbs tearing through his uniform and the flesh beneath. He grunts in pain but keeps moving, his laser gun coming up to fire point blank into the mass of writhing tentacles. You are underneath it now, in the shadow of the Biotitan's body. And the stench is so overwhelming, you actually retch into your respirator. The creature's belly is a nightmare landscape of organic machinery, tubes thick as your leg, pulsing with fluids, sacs that bulge with unidentifiable contents, and between all of it, that same glistening flesh you saw on the creature's outer surface. You can see what might be vital organs through the semi-transparent tissue, dark masses that pulse and shift with the Biotitan's metabolism. You fire your laser gun into the belly at point-blank range, and this time you see actual damage. The last bolt burns through the thinner tissue and into whatever lies beneath, and the Biotitan reacts. The creature shifts its weight, trying to crush you beneath its bulk, but you are already moving, already scrambling toward a different section of the vulnerable underside. Harrow and Yuri are firing too, their shots adding to yours, burning multiple wounds into the creature's flesh. The Biotitan is in trouble now, caught between the tank fire from one side and your harassment from below. It cannot effectively engage both threats simultaneously, and you can sense its frustration, can almost feel the hive mind's cold calculations as it attempts to prioritize targets. Above you, one of the biocannons swivels to fire at the approaching tanks, launching another barrage of acid rounds. You hear the impacts, hear the screaming of tank crews as their vehicles are dissolved around them, but you cannot afford to think about that. You have to keep firing, keep moving, keep inflicting whatever damage you can. A lash whip catches Yuri. The tendril wraps around his leg and jerks him off his feet with enough force to crack bone. He hits the ground hard, and the whip begins to drag him toward a cluster of other tendrils that are coiled like vipers waiting to strike. You see what is about to happen and react without thinking, dropping your laser gun to grab Yuri's outstretched hand. The tendril's pull is incredibly strong, powerful enough that you can feel your shoulder joints starting to separate, but you hold on. Harrow sees you struggling and adds his strength to yours, and together you manage to haul Yuri back from the whip's grasp, though it tears away half the flesh of his calf in the process. You retrieve your laser gun and keep firing, Keep burning holes in the Biotitan's vulnerable belly, even as more lash whips slash toward you. One catches you across the back, the barbs tearing through your flak armor and the flesh beneath. The pain is incredible, white-hot agony that makes your vision blur, but you do not stop firing. You cannot stop. This is all you have left, this final act of defiance against a creature that represents everything the Imperium stands against. The Leman Russ tanks are closer now, close enough that you can hear the servos of their turret mechanisms as they track targets. Their battle cannons speak in a rolling thunder, each shot a high-explosive shell designed to crack open bunkers and destroy enemy armor. These rounds hit the Biotitan's carapace with devastating force, and while they do not penetrate the thickest armor plates, they do shatter the thinner sections, exposing more vulnerable flesh beneath. Lascannons add their precise fury to the barrage, coherent light beams punching through chitin and into vital systems. The Biotitan is dying. You can see it in the way its movements become less coordinated, in the way its biocannons are no longer firing with the same accuracy. Ichor is pouring from dozens of wounds now, great gouts of alien blood that splash across the ground and hiss as they eat into the rockcrete. The creature is still fighting, still trying to complete its mission of destruction, but it is losing to the combined assault from multiple vectors. One of the tanks scores a critical hit, a battle cannon shell striking the Biotitan's head section and detonating inside the skull. The blast blows out several of those enormous eyes in a spray of vitreous fluid and skull fragments. The creature staggers, its legs losing coordination, and you realize with sudden exhilaration that it is going to fall. You grab Harrow and Yuri and pull them away from the Biotitan's underside, scrambling across the broken ground as fast as your wounded legs will carry you. The Biotitan crashes down like a felled titan, its massive body hitting the earth with an impact you feel through your entire skeleton. The legs thrash in death spasms, each one capable of pulverizing anything in their path. The lash whips go wild, slashing in all directions without coordination or purpose. And then, from somewhere deep within the dying creature's body, comes a new sound. It is a high-pitched whine, rising in frequency and volume, and you have just enough experience with tyrannid biology to recognize what it means. It is going to explode! Run! You scream the warning, even as you are already moving, already putting as much distance as possible between yourself and the Biotitan's corpse. Harrow and Yuri are right with you, all three of you running with the desperate speed of men who know death is quite literally at their heels. Behind you, the whine reaches a crescendo that makes your ears ring. The Biotitan detonates in a catastrophic biological explosion. Its death is not quiet or dignified, but a final act of spite from the hive mind, a last attempt to inflict damage even in defeat. The creature's internal gas bladders rupture all at once, mixing volatile chemicals that ignite in a massive fireball. Simultaneously, specialized organs release clouds of deadly spores, microscopic organisms that will drift on the wind and infest anything warm they touch. The explosion's shockwave hits you like a physical wall, lifting you off your feet and throwing you forward. You hit the ground rolling, your body battered by the impact, but miraculously not broken. Behind you, where the Biotitan fell, there is now a crater large enough to swallow a building, the ground itself liquefied by the heat and force of the detonation. The spore cloud is spreading outward, a toxic fog that will kill anything caught in its embrace. You force yourself to your feet and keep moving. Keep running until your lungs are burning and your legs feel like they will give out beneath you. When you finally risk a glance backward, you see the spore cloud still expanding, but beginning to dissipate as it spreads thin enough that your respirator might actually protect you. The crater is a smoking wound in the earth, and scattered around it are the bodies of lesser tyrannid organisms caught in their master's death throes. The Leman Russ tanks have formed a defensive perimeter, their turrets still scanning for threats, but their engines idling. As you approach, a figure emerges from the commander's hatch of the lead tank. It is an officer, her uniform marking her as a tank commander, and she is surveying the battlefield with the expression of someone who has seen too much death to be shocked by any of it anymore. When she sees you, Harrow, and Yuri approaching, her expression shifts to something that might be respect. "Good work down there," she calls out as you come within speaking distance. "We saw what you were doing, keeping that thing distracted while we got into position. Probably saved a dozen tanks from getting melted." Her words are matter-of-fact, professional, but they carry weight because they come from someone who understands the value of a desperate defense. Harrow straightens despite his wounds, despite the exhaustion that makes him sway on his feet. "Just following orders, ma'am. Delaying the enemy advance." His voice is hoarse from the toxic air and the screaming, but it still carries the tone of a soldier making a report. The tank commander nods. "What is left of your unit?" It is a simple question with a terrible answer. "This is it, ma'am. 3 effectives out of 2nd Squad, 4th Platoon, Cadian 217th. Harrow's voice does not waver as he delivers the casualty report, but you can see the cost in his eyes. 4 men dead in less than 10 minutes, their bodies dissolved or crushed or torn apart by a creature that should not exist. The officer processes this information with a grim expression. "Get yourselves to the aid station, then report to regimental command. They are scraping together composite units from survivors. If you can still hold a weapon, they will find a place for you." She pauses, then adds something that is probably meant to be encouraging. "The Emperor protects those who are willing to stand and fight. You stood. That counts for something." You want to believe her. You want to believe that your actions mattered, that the death of your squad mates served some greater purpose. But as you look at the smoking crater where the Bio-Titan fell, as you see the devastation it inflicted in its brief rampage through this sector, you cannot help but think about all the other Bio-Titans that must be out there. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, each one a walking apocalypse. How many more squads will be sent to delay them? How many more troopers will die buying seconds and meters of ground? The 3 of you make your way toward the rear lines, such as they are. Your wounds are screaming for attention now that the adrenaline is fading, but you stay on your feet through sheer, stubborn will. Yuri is limping badly, his ruined calf leaving a trail of blood on the ground. Harrow has one arm hanging useless at his side, the shoulder torn open by that lash whip strike. And you can feel the wetness on your back where your own wound continues to bleed, can feel the burning pain of torn muscle and lacerated flesh. But you are alive. Against all probability, against every reasonable expectation, you survived an encounter with a Bio-Titan. The fact that it took an entire tank squadron to actually kill the thing does not diminish your contribution. You stood and fought when running would have been easier. You inflicted damage when damage seemed impossible. You were a guardsman, and you did what guardsmen do. You held the line. As you walk through the ruined city, you pass other soldiers, other survivors of this endless war against the tyrannid swarm. Some are wounded like you, making their way to aid stations and hoping the medics have enough supplies left to actually treat their injuries. Others are moving toward the sound of gunfire, fresh units being committed to the defense even as the perimeter continues to shrink. You see the faces of these soldiers, young and old, scared and determined, and you recognize in them the same desperate resolve that kept you fighting. The aid station is a collection of tents erected in the partial shelter of a collapsed administratum building. Wounded men and women fill every available space, some on stretchers, others sitting against walls while they wait for treatment. The medical personnel are overwhelmed, triaging patients with brutal efficiency and sending the worst cases to the limited number of actual Medici officers while treating the more minor wounds themselves. A young medic, barely out of his teens and looking like he has not slept in days, examines your back with hands that are steadier than his eyes. He cleans the wound with antiseptic that burns worse than the original injury and applies a field dressing that will have to suffice until you can get proper treatment. You will live, he tells you, which is about the best news you could hope for under the circumstances. Keep the dressing clean and come back if you develop a fever. Emperor knows what kind of toxins those Xenos claws carry. Yuri gets more extensive treatment, his leg requiring actual sutures to close the worst of the damage and a regenerative pack to prevent infection. Harrow refuses all but the most basic field aid, claiming that others need it more than he does, though you suspect he is simply too stubborn to admit how much pain he must be in. When you are all patched up as well as possible given the circumstances, Harrow leads you to the regimental command post. This turns out to be a bunker that somehow survived the initial Tyranid assault, its walls scarred but intact, and its interior packed with officers and Vox operators trying to coordinate a defense that grows more desperate by the hour. The noise level is overwhelming, dozens of conversations happening simultaneously as reports come in and orders go out. A harried-looking lieutenant takes your report, noting down the destruction of the Bio-Titan and the casualties your squad sustained. He does not waste time on commiserations or praise, simply processes the information and assigns you to a composite unit being formed from the remnants of 3 different platoons. Report to Sergeant Caius in Sector 7. He is putting together a defense line and needs every warm body he can get. Dismissed. You salute and leave, following Harrow through the controlled chaos of the command bunker and back out into the ash-choked air. The walk to Sector 7 takes you through parts of the city you do not recognize, though whether that is because you have never been here before or because the Tyranid infestation has transformed the landscape beyond recognition, you cannot say. The organic growths are everywhere, pulsing masses of tissue that coat buildings and streets, digesting everything they touch and converting it into biomass that will feed the swarm. Sergeant Caius turns out to be a grizzled veteran of the Mordian Iron Guard, his uniform still somehow immaculate, despite the filth and destruction all around. He receives you and the others with a curt nod and assigns you to firing positions along a barricade constructed from rubble and salvaged materials. The Xenos will be coming again soon, he tells you in a voice that brooks no argument. When they do, you will hold this line until ordered otherwise, or until you are dead. Those are your only 2 options. Understood? You understand perfectly. This is how it is now, how it will continue to be until either the Tyranids are defeated or everyone on this world is dead. There is no room for doubt or fear, no space for anything except the grim determination to sell your life as dearly as possible. You check your laser gun, verify that you still have power packs remaining, and settle into your assigned position to wait for the next wave. The hours pass in a blur of exhaustion and vigilance. Small groups of Tyranid organisms probe the defenses, testing for weaknesses, and are driven back by concentrated laser gun fire. Somewhere to the north, you can hear the thunder of artillery as the remaining heavy guns engage targets beyond visual range. The sky never gets truly light or truly dark, locked in a perpetual twilight by the layers of ash and spores that choke the atmosphere. You think about the Bio-Titan, about those final moments underneath its belly when death seemed absolute and certain. You think about Thane and Mensk, crushed beneath collapsing floors, about Kellen, dissolved by acid while Harrow ended his suffering, about Vanson, beetles burrowing into his brain, about Gallon, opened from shoulder to hip by a Hormagaunts talons. 7 men had started this day together, brothers in arms bound by shared experience and the desperate need to rely on each other for survival. Now only 3 remain, and you do not know how long that number will stay at 3. But you also think about the fact that the Bio-Titan is dead. A creature that should have been unstoppable was stopped, brought down by the combined efforts of Guardsmen and tank crews working together against impossible odds. It is a small victory in a war that seems to have no victories, only lesser defeats, but it is something. It proves that the Tyranids can be beaten, that they are not the invincible force they seem. As night falls, or what passes for night on this dying world, you allow yourself a moment of reflection on what it means to face a Bio-Titan, as a guardsman. It means confronting your own insignificance, staring up at a creature so massive and terrible that your entire existence means nothing to it. It means watching your friends die in ways that no human should have to witness. It means making the choice to fight anyway, to raise your laser gun and fire even when reason tells you that your shots are meaningless. But it also means being part of something larger than yourself. Every shot you fired into that creature's belly mattered, even if individually they did nothing. Collectively, the accumulated damage from your harassment and the tank squadron's assault was enough to bring down a monster. Your squad's sacrifice bought time for reinforcements to arrive, bought the precious seconds needed for the tanks to get into position and deliver their killing blows. You are a guardsman. You are one man with a laser gun standing against the horrors of a galaxy that wants to consume or corrupt or destroy everything humanity has built. You are fragile and weak and terribly, terribly mortal. But you stand anyway. You fight anyway, because if enough guardsmen stand, if enough fragile humans raise their laser guns and refuse to surrender, then even bio-titans can fall. The next wave comes at dawn, a fresh surge of tyrannid organisms pressing against the defense line. You sight down your laser gun and begin to fire, adding your small contribution to the wall of light that meets the alien advance. Beside you, Harrow and Yuri do the same. 3 survivors among thousands. 3 men who looked into the face of nightmare and lived to fight another day. The Emperor protects, they say. But the Emperor helps those who protect themselves. So you fire and reload and fire again, and you hold the line, because holding the line is all that stands between the Imperium and oblivion. This is what it means to be a guardsman. This is what it means to face a bio-titan and survive to tell the tale. The war continues, as it always does. The Tyranids press forward, an endless tide of alien hunger given form. The Imperial Guard pushes back, spending lives like currency to buy time and ground. Cities fall and are retaken, only to fall again. Entire regiments are ground down to nothing and replaced by fresh troops shipped in from distant worlds. The meat grinder of the front lines devours everything fed into it and demands more. But in the midst of this apocalypse, small moments of humanity persist. Troopers share rations and tell stories of home. Veterans teach survival tricks to green recruits. Officers make impossible decisions and live with the weight of them. And somewhere in a ruined city on a dying world, 3 guardsmen hold a barricade against the dark. You survived the bio-titan. The memory of those moments underneath its belly, firing point blank into alien flesh, while lash whips slashed at you from all sides, will stay with you for whatever time remains. The images of your squad mates' deaths will haunt your dreams, assuming you live long enough to dream again. The smell of the creature, the sound of its footfalls, the sight of those massive eyes regarding you with alien intelligence, these things are burned into your mind with perfect, terrible clarity. But you survived, and that survival means something. It means that the next time a bio-titan appears on the battlefield, you will know what to look for, where the weak points are, how to maximize what little offensive capability a laser gun provides. It means you can pass that knowledge to others, can train them in the desperate tactics that might let them live through similar encounters. Each survivor is a repository of hard-won experience, and in a war like this, experience is more valuable than ammunition. Days become weeks, and weeks blur into months. The fighting never stops completely, though it ebbs and flows in intensity. Your composite unit gains new members as survivors from other battles are folded into it, and loses members as combat takes its inevitable toll. Harrow remains, somehow still alive despite dozens of close calls, and increasingly scarred by wounds that never quite heal properly. Yuri stays at your side, his leg healed enough to walk on, though he will never run again like he used to. And you endure, one day at a time, one firefight at a time, one impossible stand at a time. You encounter other Tyranid monsters in this extended campaign. A carnifex that takes 3 anti-tank missiles to bring down. A swarm of gargoyles that blot out the sky and rain death from above. A trigon that burrows up through the ground beneath a defensive position and slaughters an entire platoon before it can be stopped. Each creature is a nightmare in its own right. Each battle a desperate struggle for survival. But none of them affect you quite like the Bio-Titan did. That creature was something beyond the normal scale of war, beyond the usual calculus of weapons and armor and tactics. It was apocalypse given form, and you stood against it with nothing but your lasgun and your refusal to die quietly. That experience changed you in ways that are hard to articulate, made you simultaneously more afraid and more confident, more aware of your own mortality, and more determined to make each moment count. You think sometimes about the tank commander who praised your actions that day, about her words concerning how you had saved lives by keeping the Bio-Titan distracted. You wonder if she survived, if her tank is still out there somewhere covering another desperate defense. You wonder about all the other survivors, all the other troopers who faced the same horror you did and somehow lived through it. Are they still fighting? Have they fallen to other monsters, other battles? There is no way to know. The war is too vast, too chaotic, for individual fates to be tracked or mourned. What you do know is this: you are alive, you are still fighting, and as long as you can raise your lasgun and pull the trigger, as long as you can stand on your own 2 feet and hold a position, you will continue to do what Guardsmen do. You will hold the line. You will make the enemy pay for every meter of ground. You will stand as a bulwark against the alien tide that seeks to consume all of humanity. The Bio-Titan was a test, perhaps the ultimate test of what it means to be a soldier in the Imperial Guard. You were found adequate, not heroic, not superhuman, but adequate. You did your duty when duty was a death sentence. You fought when fighting seemed pointless. You survived when survival required equal parts skill and luck. And in doing so, you joined the ranks of countless other guardsmen across the galaxy who have faced impossible odds and refused to break. This is the reality of war against the Tyranids. There are no glorious charges or heroic last stands, only brutal calculus and desperate measures. There are no victories that change the course of the war, only tactical successes that buy time and preserve forces for the next engagement. There is no certainty except death, no promise except pain, no guarantee except that the fighting will continue until either you fall or the enemy is driven back. And yet, Guardsmen fight on. They fight because the alternative is submission to the darkness. They fight because someone must stand between the monsters and the civilians they prey upon. They fight because the Imperium, for all its flaws and cruelties, is still humanity's last bulwark against a galaxy that would destroy it utterly. They fight because they are Guardsmen, and Guardsmen do not surrender. You have looked into the face of a Bio-Titan and lived. That puts you in a very small, very exclusive club of survivors who can make the same claim. It also means you understand, in a way that most humans never will, just how vast and terrible the threats facing humanity truly are. The Bio-Titan was just one creature, one small piece of a hive fleet that contains thousands of such monstrosities. Behind it come billions of lesser organisms, millions of larger ones, and horrors beyond imagining that the hive mind has not yet seen fit to deploy. Against this tide stands the Imperial Guard, billions of men and women armed with lasguns and faith, and the stubborn refusal to go quietly into extinction. They are not space marines with power armor and superhuman abilities. They are not titans with void shields and apocalyptic weapons. They are just people, scared and tired and all too mortal, doing a job that needs doing because nobody else will. You are one of those people. You have earned your place among them through blood and fire, through watching friends die and somehow surviving, when by all rights you should have died beside them. You carry scars now, physical and psychological, that mark you as a veteran of the war against the swarm, and you carry knowledge, hard-won and paid for in lives, about how to fight these creatures, and sometimes, occasionally, how to win. So when the next alert sounds, When the Voxcaster crackles to life with reports of another Tyranid assault, you will pick up your laser gun and move to your assigned position. You will check your power packs and verify your firing lanes and prepare yourself mentally for what is coming. And when the creatures appear, whether they are termagants or carnifexes, or even another bio-titan, you will sight down your weapon and pull the trigger. Because that is what Guardsmen do. That is what you do. You stand and fight, not because you expect to win, but because surrender is not an option. You hold the line, not because the line can be held forever, but because every second it holds is a second someone else can use to escape or regroup or prepare. You are a soldier of the Imperium, and your duty is clear, even when the odds are hopeless and the future is uncertain. The Bio-Titan taught you that lesson in the most brutal way possible. It showed you the scale of the threat facing humanity, the sheer overwhelming power of the Tyranid hive mind. But it also showed you that even the mightiest enemies can fall, that even overwhelming force can be defeated if enough people are willing to stand against it. That lesson is worth the price you paid to learn it, worth the nightmares and the scars and the weight of survivor's guilt. So you fight on, one day at a time, one battle at a time. You hold your sector of the defensive line with Harrow and Yuri beside you. 3 veterans among thousands. 3 survivors who know what is coming and fight anyway. The war will continue long after you are gone, fought by soldiers who never knew your name or heard your story. But in the time you have, in the battles you fight, you will make a difference. You will save lives by taking enemy ones. You will buy time through your sacrifice. You will hold the line. And perhaps, when the final accounting is made and the Emperor judges the worth of your service, that will be enough. You were a Guardsman who faced a Bio-Titan and survived to fight again. You stood when standing meant dying and fought when fighting meant suffering. You held the line when the line was all that separated the Imperium from disaster. That is the legacy you will leave, inscribed not in monuments or records, but in the continued existence of the species you died protecting. The Emperor protects, but the Emperor works through the hands and hearts of men and women willing to stand in defense of humanity. You have proven yourself worthy of that calling, and no matter what comes next, no matter how this war ultimately ends, that worthiness cannot be taken from you. So stand, Guardsman. Stand and fight and hold the line. The galaxy is vast and dark and filled with horrors beyond comprehension. But while soldiers like you remain willing to stand against it, there is still hope. While Guardsmen hold the line, humanity survives. While the Imperial Guard fights, the Imperium endures. And that, in the end, is what it means to face a Bio-Titan and live to tell the tale. Not that you won, not that you triumphed, but that you stood your ground and did your duty and bought with your courage the time that others needed. You are a Guardsman. You held the line, and that is the highest honor any soldier can achieve. If you enjoyed this deep dive into what it truly means to face one of the Tyranid hive fleet's most terrifying weapons of war, please like and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories from the front lines waiting to be told, more glimpses into the lives of the common soldiers who fight and die in the Emperor's name. These are the unsung heroes of the Imperium, the men and women who stand between humanity and the darkness. Their stories deserve to be heard. Their sacrifices deserve to be remembered. Until next time, may the Emperor protect.